The New Britain Board of Education, providing students with a high-quality education.
Okay. The time is 6:04. We will call the Board of Education meeting to order. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Ponte, if you would please lead us.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Canada, if you would please call the roll.
Ms. Ponte?
here.
Ms. Cheney?
Here.
Mr. Gay? Mr. Mercier?
Here.
Ms. Muniz?
Here.
Ms. Parker?
Here.
Ms. Nancy Rodriguez?
Here.
Ms. Sims?
Here.
Ms. Sanders Connolly? Ms. Nicole Rodriguez?
Here. Thank you. Yes. Okay. And I see we have Alderman Danny Salerno in the audience. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. If we could take a brief moment of silence, please. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the passing of Coach Marco Villa, a basketball coach that has been in New Britain and coaching our youth for a long, long time. He was one of my coaches, and I know several. He had a great impact at the Boys and Girls Club in New Britain High School, and AAU and other places, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention him. Thank you. No one has signed up for public participation. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? Mr. Salerno?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think I just was thinking about when you mentioned Mr. Vila as well, and I just think it'd be appropriate to mention that we lost in the community someone who was very supportive of the school system here in the city over the years, a graduate from New Britain High School, Ken Griffin, Selden Griffin Jr., or the fourth actually, who was certainly a contributing member to this community, and again, a byproduct of our school system, and who behind the scenes did a lot of different things through the Rotary Club and so on. I just think it's just important to mention him at this point, which is all. So we're going to miss him. Did a lot of things I said behind the scenes, and he was, as a quick point, he just below City Hall there was 27 West Main Street, was where his father actually worked for what was known as Putnam Coffin and Burr. I was employed by them for some time, and it became Advest Company. But that's where Kenny would hang out quite a bit as a musician and so on. But again, he's given a lot, his family has as well. So just a moment that I thought I'd share that. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Anyone else who would like to address the board? Okay, seeing none. Public participation is now closed, and it is time for the superintendent's report.
Okay.
Madam C.
Thank you. There's quite a bit here tonight. I'm going to leave a lot of that for you to read. I'll just cover some of the high points. We are well underway, and we've been working since about January with our district redesign. You know that we just recently approved entering a partnership with School by Design, who is one of those partners that's helping us to look at our existing resources and being able to optimize our resources given the budget constraints that we have. And our top three ITs are really increasing student learning time in an engaging and enriching way, but also increasing teacher time for professional development and creating efficiencies within to ensure that every dollar we spend is aligned. And again, we went over, it's really about just ensuring that we have all hands on deck. And everyone who is a certified staff is really working with groups of children. So that's ongoing. We spent the last couple of days, I know you're all invited tomorrow evening to our dinner. And that will be at New Britain High School. I did have to change the time to 5 o'clock, but I look forward to seeing you there. We did present our budget last week to City Finance Board, and we're waiting to hear. Good questions came up, and we're hopeful that this will not be another year of flat funding. As far as safety, safety procedures, what I really did, and I've been keeping you updated with the emails that I've sent out to all staff. You'll notice that we do have an all-staff training. This is inclusive of 1,300 staff members beginning next Wednesday, the 14th, and it will be in 5 phases that they're trained. Phase 1 is going to be face-to-face, and it's in the auditorium at New Britain High School. Phase 2 and 3, 4, and 5 will be more on-site at each building. This is a continuation of already measures that we have in place, and I will say that in a lot of ways, we got a really nice letter actually that the mayor forwarded to me about one of our family members that travels across the state and comes back to New Britain and says, we still have a very safe environment in terms of adults entering the building, Raptor wear where we are asking for IDs. And so we are ahead in a lot of ways. Doesn't mean that we can't always continue. So that's coming. But in addition to that, I guess I wanted to say that, with our new, and it's always looking at it in 2 ways. What are the short-term things that we need to fix in terms of safety, physical safety, and updating staff on how to respond to maybe a violent or critical incident, but also building from the other end is mental wellness, health, and safety. And so our pre-K through 3 curricula, we just actually had a crosswalks done. It's aligned very nicely with what the State Department of Ed has just come out with recently around the key indicators that we should be touching on in terms of social emotional wellness and curriculum. One thing, and Mr. Prokop is not here, I apologize tonight to really talk too much, so if you have questions, I may have to refer those to Jeff. But we will be going with an online process for student registration, and I think it's just important now that our families know that this is coming, because they might call you and ask for registration packets. And so, but we are going to a fully online form. And I know, Ms. Sims, you said you were interested in just kind of looking over that form before it went on. So, and Jeff, Mr. Prokop knows that too, just to make sure that the question's there. So that's kind of exciting, and we're going to mass text messaging as well. That's another, I believe tomorrow night is when the first email goes out, or text message goes out, people can respond to it, so we're going to see what kind of response we get from our families around text messaging. Just some kudos to the things we are doing right. We have several phone calls from different districts asking to see different ways of what we're doing around developmentally appropriate practices and play in K&1. But I thought this was nice because in late February, Middletown actually came out to see what we're doing, particularly with our math teachers and the coaching and the structure of our math department now and what that block of time looks like. So it was a kudos that they wanted to come out, and then we received a really nice letter back just saying that the culture and the climate in the building was evident, that the kids were there was high expectations, and so that was just it's a nice shout out to the administration over at Pulaski for that. I see Miss Major just walked in, and so I was just going to start talking a little bit about March 14th, the walkout day. So if you wouldn't mind just coming up, because I know there's probably new details to it, and giving an overview of what we're doing.
Hi.
Hello.
So when the kind of media started talking about this idea of high schools across the country coming together to kind of support Parkland and just standing up for school violence in general and promoting school safety, we thought, okay, this could be a great opportunity for us to really kind of listen to our students, listen to what they have to say, what their feelings are, and work with them, with our staff, So we've held 2 planning meetings, and I've had a couple individual meetings with some of the students that have really spoken up wanting to be a part of this. So what it's looking like is we are going to, it's a half day anyway, March 14th was already a half day. So at 11 o'clock, we have a abbreviated schedule up until 11 o'clock. At 11 o'clock, we're gonna break into 11th period. Those students who do not have an 11th period will report to the lecture hall for any of our early release students who want to participate. We have from our students a live streamed short program that's going to be streamed into classrooms like we do morning announcements. We've been collecting written submissions from our students who are writing about standing up against school violence and promoting school safety and just kind of their thoughts and feelings about some of the things that they've seen or heard. So those submissions are actually going to go to our next planning meeting with students, which is tomorrow. We're going to make copies of those submissions, break up into groups, and pick the top 3 or 4 that we feel as a group really embodies what it is that we're trying to get across. The biggest point that we're trying to make is that we're not promoting more gun rights, we're not promoting less gun rights. It's not about guns. It's about standing up against school violence in general and about promoting school safety in general. So not really a political viewpoint of any kind. So we're going to pick submissions that we feel embody that, and then those would be recited or read by the students who submitted them during that short program. From that point, we would make a statement just kind of reiterating what it is that we are as a student body kind of voicing or wanting to be heard about. And then the plan is at 11:15, 11:20, we're going to line up outside of on Mill Street. We've already met with our school resource officers. We've met with our security officers. Our JRTC has volunteered to also be in full uniform to kind of march along the sides of the group. We've talked with faculty council as far as what our plan is for teachers, also marching along the sides of the group. We're going to go down Mill Street, take a right onto South Main Street, and then a quick right up Daniel Bugnacki Way, up Brookside. So the idea is that we are marching together, and then we should make our entrance back up into the New Britain High School parking lot right around noon, which is when we dismiss for the day. And the buses will be there waiting for us to leave. What has really come out of this, which is exciting, is some of our English teachers are using it as an opportunity to teach rhetoric and the power of words and how we use rhetoric in order to get a point across. Doing this to make signs or banners for the day, all with teacher guidance, obviously. Our history teachers have started talking about civil discourse in the past, leading up to today, and what that can look like. So it's really kind of become a really good learning opportunity for our students, and I think the biggest piece is they feel heard, and I think they feel that they're able to express their opinions in conjunction with staff in a positive way.
What about the community?
So as of right now, we've reached out to the Anna Grace Project, who were very, very interested in participating with us. The last email I saw, Nelba was very interested and was actually really loved the way that we kind of had tastefully designed the day or the event. She just wasn't totally sure if she was actually going to be in Parkland on that day. So if not, though, she wants to be there with us. She said she would be there. I'm not completely sure yet as far as the mayor or anything like that. I know that Matt and I have been in conversation about that. So we will confirm that, this week. And then Nancy, obviously, as well, being a part of that short live stream version. We haven't yet solidified which adults would actually be speaking during that time, but we can confirm that this week. We really want to make it about the kids, but we also obviously want to give, others their due time to speak as well in support of the kids. We were trying to stay away, like I said, from political views. So we were back and forth about whether to invite, people who may have very strict political views, because then it can become more about that and less about what it is that our students are really trying to voice. So that's kind of where we stand right now. But if anyone has suggestions of people they feel they might want to look into being involved, we're very open at this point for ideas and things.
Any questions on that? Thanks, Carrie.
Okay, thank you.
And that's about it for the superintendent report for the week.
And your letter showed up today in the mail.
Oh, it did?
Yes.
Right. I did put out a mailing to all families. It was in conjunction with the mayor's office and the chief of police office. We all, we wrote a letter together talking about safety and was mailed to all of our families.
All right, committee reports. Let's start with not finance. Policy.
Policy had a, good discussion around some of the policies you'll see under new business. One item was put on the consent agenda, and that is just a certification statement that we have to make that our foods comply with the necessary. It's an annual statement that we have to recertify each year. And since it's pretty pro forma, that's why we put it onto the consent agenda. And then the rest of the policies we can discuss when they come up under new business, if there are any questions about them.
Okay. Personnel?
Personnel met last week. We talked about 2 new BSA positions that were proposed for the high school. They are aligned with the goal of reducing out-of-school suspensions. Are they on? They're not on, okay.
Not on.
I didn't think so, but, thank you.
And finance, Ms. Cully, is that here? Do anyone want to take up for that?
I was not sitting in on the meeting, but the one thing that was brought up that is under consent that I just thought was worth noting, there is a purchase order for a Whitson's van, and some board members might look at that and go, didn't we just do that? And what it was is in the initial bid waiver, there was an error in the quote that was received. It was for a van without the necessary refrigeration unit. And so they couldn't just bid that part out. So this bid is replacing that previous one. So that was just a correction that they caught.
Right. Any other? Okay, so board reports. Does anyone have any board reports?
I had the pleasure of reading for Read Across America at Smith and Relk on Friday. I had to stop myself because I'm used to being in classrooms reading and counting kids, and I could say, it's not my responsibility. But they were great. I had, I specifically asked, I spent so much time with preschoolers, I specifically asked for older kids, so I had 2nd grade and a 4th grade, which were tons of fun. And also Saturday night, I attended the PMA's gala, which raises money. I think this year they're concentrating on replacing Madrigal costumes. So it was well attended. The food was great, as always, good company. So it was fun.
Yes, I too attended the Read Across America, and I was invited to Smith Elementary School and to Vance. And I was able to read to a kindergarten class at Smith and then a 3rd grade class at Vance. And I just love the way they just received me. And I mean, when I went to Vance, they had greeters and hostess, and they took you to their classrooms, and it was just so well put together, so organized, so impressive. So shout out to those schools for doing such an amazing job with their guests.
Excellent. Anyone else?
I just want to touch on, because Gail's not here to do it, also on our consent agenda we have several donations. First is a big thank you to Burlington Stores, formerly Burlington Coat Factory. They're donating $10,000 to North End School for supplies as an outreach partnership program that they do. We also received a $1,000 donation from Local 51, that's our administrators union, and that's going to the New Britain High School musical. So thank you to Local 51 for your generosity. We also accepted a donation, or it's on there to accept donation for $3,000. That's the value for 15 instruments that were collected by Helkin Sosa as part of an Eagle Scout project for the troop he goes to in West Hartford. And as a scout myself and an Eagle Scout, I would, thank you for that, and that's a really great project to do. And then we also received a donation for $27,000 $400, and we'll round up to say $11 from the Coalition of for New Britain's Youth, and that's going to go towards some of the work we've been doing with Boys Town towards reducing suspension, alternatives to suspension, well-managed classroom, and other initiatives that they've been, Boys Town has helped bring into our district. So thank you to all of those groups for those generous donations.
I also had the opportunity to go to De Loretto School for their awards ceremony for kindergarten, and it was so cute. It was just, I mean, the kids, the teachers come up and they announce the kids' names. They are so well mannered. They walk up, they get their little awards, they sit on the stage, and you would think, you know, they start fidgeting and moving. They don't move. They just sit there holding their awards, waiting for their pictures to be taken, and then they go and they sit down, and it's just so well run and so smooth. I have been to lots of awards for children, and they do a really good job, and they're in and out, so they don't keep them there too long, and it's well done. It's very cute. Okay. All right. Yes. All right. So if I could have student reports, do you have anything to report on today?
Well, we have a couple topics that we are following. We just didn't want to present it this week because it's not what it should be. It's not at its best right now, so we're just going to wait for the next station to put something together.
Okay. Any burning issues? No?
Well, I just want to mention the school walkout. I know a lot of students are very excited about that because students don't really get to speak on these topics a lot. They don't get, they don't get to just go say how they feel like this, especially because it's such a bigger issue. It's not just no gossip around school. This is a huge issue, and it's, kids are really grateful that they finally get to say like, hey, this is how I feel. This is what safety is to me. This is how this should be done, and I agree that I think it's a very positive thing for the school to do.
Excellent. Thank you. Yep. All right. On to the consent agenda. Those of you can peruse it and make sure there's nothing that you would like to take off for special mention. Seeing none. Okay, on to new business.
Motion to discuss policy 6,000 schools, strategic school improvement plans.
Second.
This is just sort of updating in our packets. We have the existing policy, and it was expanded quite a bit. This is based off of some of what is in the CAPE model policy, but we also went through in policy to make sure that it really spoke to our school vision as well. One thing of note is under the area of school accountability, we made sure that the language there, especially around the purpose of education, matched very closely with our district's mission and vision. And this is just sort of updating our policy to go along with where the state's moving and where the other areas of legislature are moving around school accountability and looking at the whole child, climate and culture, and those other pieces of social and emotional development.
This is the first read. Just a reminder, so the policies, when they are on here for the first time, it's the first read, so you have a chance to look at it, dissect it, see if there's any questions you have, and then the next time we'll go on the policy itself.
Okay. Motion to postpone till our next board meeting.
Second.
All those in favor of postponing to the next meeting?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Motion to discuss policy 6141.11, curriculum development.
Second.
And again, it's actually when we looked at the current language that's out there in some various districts as well as CAVE. It was very closely aligned to what we already had in place. One area that we did sort of clear up the language was the area that's highlighted in yellow, because it seemed counter to the bullets above, which had talked about how the district had the responsibility of planning and discussing through a curriculum committee. And actually, I think there is a section that in the editing map that may have gotten dropped from the final version that ended up in our packet. So I think when this comes back, it might be a small change to propose to that area, because there had been a paragraph talking about the curriculum committee and its responsibility, and talked about how that was the body for approving curriculum in the district. And then the original language that had been at the end talked about how the Board of Education reserves the authority.
Right.
And so we clarified that to state that along with it, it is our responsibility and authority. Again, subject to limits specified by the state. So I'll touch base with Matt on that. And as always, if there's ever any questions or feedback or proposed revisions, feel free to reach out to myself or Nicole, and we can always prepare those for future meetings. Motion postponed to our next meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Unless you'll hear from me too. Motion to discuss policy 6154, homework.
Second.
This one I can actually say, this has gone through a lengthy process. This started in curriculum over a year ago.
Forever.
And it has been reviewed by curriculum, and we went out looking at multiple examples. And big thanks to Amy and Laura for doing a lot of footwork on this. Some of the main changes to this are really sort of saying what is the purpose of homework, and we had many lengthy conversations about it. Some of the concerns that came out of that discussion is times when homework is becoming an impediment to student success rather than a tool for student success. And especially with the fact that homework occurs outside of the school day, and we don't necessarily understand every day all the situations that students may be facing. We wanted to craft a policy that really got to the core of what homework should be focusing on, and also to make sure that it's not weighing students down. One thing I highly recommend the board members look over this in detail, and we again welcome all feedback. But one piece that I feel very strongly about is under the administrative procedure, where we outline different guidelines for teachers, students, and parents, because we felt that homework is something where all of those stakeholders involved have things that to think about and consider. But under the guidelines for teachers, one thing is under 6, independent practice should not count negatively towards a student's grade. And if we're going towards mastery-based learning, definitely it can be something where some students are better at showing their strengths through homework and independent study assignments. But for those students who, for whatever reason, have struggles with that but can still demonstrate mastery, for them to be negatively impacted due to factors beyond our control is something that we went over a lot. I think Ms. Ponte also spoke very strongly towards that. So those are some of the highlights that I think are in there, but we really dug through this quite a bit. So that's all I have to say, and I don't know if Ms. Ponte has anything to add, because she also really helped a lot with this.
I think you said it all.
Okay. Great. Can I have a motion for partnerships to approve the bid waiver and purchase order for,
Motion.
motion to postpone.
Motion to postpone on the homework policy until our next meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. All right, now I'll entertain a motion to approve the bid waiver.
Motion.
Second.
Okay. This is a bid waiver and purchase order for Boys Town Service Proposal. Do you want to say anything?
I can say a little bit, but I
Or
see Miss
Ryan.
Morgan's in the, sorry, it's not Morgan anymore.
It's not, what is
Langer.
it? Langer, okay.
Yes.
Married,
That's
yes.
right. So anyway, Ryan, if you want to come up and speak.
Sure. So we've been working on these Boys Town contracts for a few years now. We started with well-managed schools at our core, then we introduced specialized classroom management in some of our alternative education settings. If you remember, I came to you in August and I told you we need another year to be able to get the specialized classroom, the people implementing specialized classroom to a sustainability place, meaning within their programs they have coaches, they have trainers, so that they can keep collecting data, keep ensuring the program's running, and also train new hires as they come on. So specialized classroom, we entered that year and a half time in August, but then the Safe Schools Healthy Students grant ran out. So when I brought you the contract in August, it was pending the funds that we had with Safe Schools Healthy Students. So we did start the year with that, and we did what we could with that money, but the programs still need more work. So I come here today to ask you to approve the bid waiver for the contract that Boys Town prepared going forward to the end of this school year for those implementing specialized classroom management out of the Alliance funding that Superintendent Sarah recommended.
And it didn't go through committee, right?
No.
Right. Any questions from the board?
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Annie Parker. We met in
Yep.
Melville. So the specialized classroom, can you just tell a little bit about that?
Sure. So, and Kelly Grant, please step in if I'm not explaining any of this correctly. So, well-managed schools is provided at the core for classroom management. It doesn't work when you look at our programs like the Transition Center, Brookside School, Sunrise, which is at 2 elementary schools, and STEPS at both middle schools. They need a different structure for when you look at classroom management, and also when you look at the way that we're correcting and managing or teaching the behaviors that they're lacking. So what's causing the disciplinary referrals or suspension issues, that kind of thing. So specialized classroom management is the program that we've implemented, trained our staff, trained our administrators to be able to better modify and teach those behaviors, and then also hopefully affect the disciplinary and the suspension rates in those settings.
And it's just for the administrators?
Nope, all classrooms that are affiliated with those programs. All teachers, all support staff have been trained, administrators, support staff, teachers.
So just one quick question I want to ask
Yep.
a lot. So how does that look in the classroom? What kinds of things?
This might be more of a Kelly question, but on my side of things, what I have seen is that it's the way that the teacher communicates with the student, the way that they have, in specialized classroom management, they have the behavior cards, correct?
So these are students who are identified as special education students, and they are not in regular classroom settings. We have 5 programs throughout the district. 2 of them are schools, and then we have classrooms in 2 elementary schools and classrooms in 2 middle schools. And I think we have over 10 classrooms altogether, but these are all self-contained classrooms for students whose difficulties with behavioral regulation don't allow them to be in regular classrooms. And so when I got here a few years ago, one of the goals that we established was that we did not want to continue to send our children to outplacements, that we wanted to be able to build programs in our schools where we could manage children's behaviors, but teach them the replacement skills and the behaviors so that eventually they can go back to the regular education programs. So that is the goal of specialized classroom management. So there is a teacher, there are paraeducators, and there are behavior support assistants in all of our programs. If the student acts out, they may be removed for a brief period to interact with an adult to talk about what just happened. There's a reflection piece, there's a learning piece about what is the replacement behavior, and then there's a restorative piece, something that they have to do in order to regain entry back to the classroom. And what we have seen with data is that our students are being restrained less, secluded less, and we have been able to return quite a few students back to regular education.
That all sounds like good things to me.
Yeah.
Right.
That is definitely in the right direction. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, so can you explain this to me again? This was approved already? This is.
Not this contract. So I
Not
knew,
this
when I
contract.
came in August, I knew that the Safe Schools Healthy Students Grant would end September 30th, with that being that grant's fiscal year. So while we knew from Boys Town they needed a full year and a half, we only brought the contract forward for what we could afford with that grant. So the contract that was approved in, it was probably July or August, was not for the full year and a half. It was for up until I think October. So we were able to stretch those dollars a little bit, but we had to wait until we could identify more funds. So we knew there was a need and kind of a gap in services, but we couldn't overcommit to the contract without identifying the grant source for it.
All right, I think I need a little bit more clarification because my understanding is, how is this another subcategory? Is it like another subcategory from the programs that we already have in place, like those other, transition centers and?
No, it's still continuation.
These are the programs. So
Right.
these,
Within those programs.
this
The practice.
training is the support for those programs.
Okay,
So all of the teachers at the transition center,
okay.
all of the staff at Brookside School, all of the staff in the two STEPS programs at the two middle schools, and all of the staff in the Sunrise programs. So all of those staff prior did not have the rigor of being able to actually impact students because they weren't trained on the corrective teaching piece. Now they all have that, and this has been that ongoing coming in and updating and retraining and getting people moving forward.
So just a little background for you on that. What it entails is really the technical assistant that the national consultants, Boys Town, come in and provide. So they're inside the classrooms, they're observing, they're providing training on the spot, they're providing training on our half days, they're providing training directly to administrators. But it takes a while to go from initial training to the place where you can train those teachers to then be the trainers. So that's why it's been so important for us to start this process and see it all the way through so we don't quit mid-project and have teachers that are trained in it, but they don't have the ability to review their data and train new teachers coming in with staff turnover.
Thank you.
I just have another question. So the data that you were talking about, have we gotten a report of that data?
So that's data that we report on a regular basis, and it's the seclusion and restraint data. And so that is not part of our plan, but we can get you that if you would like to see that. Our seclusion and restraints have gone down significantly in the district, but hugely in these programs. And so much so that New Britain Transition Center was actually recently asked to submit an application to present at the national conference next year because of the success that they've had over the last 2 years.
And one other thing I do want to note for you on data is that one reason we moved into specialized classroom management in the first place is because we had already started using their program, Well-Managed Schools, in all of our elementary schools at the core. So we were seeing really strong data with that, with less discipline referrals, less suspensions, and less than chronic absenteeism declining. So looking at that data going so well, we decided to say, okay, what can we put into these other programs to support what we're doing at the core?
What year is this?
What year? What year is this of specialized
Of the program.
Of
No, the
specialized
program in
classroom?
general. I know it's 2018, but I mean, when did we start? I know it sounded funny. I was like, I knew the answer already, but
I
no, what I
believe
mean
that
is,
the first year of launching well-managed schools was 2014, 2015.
Okay.
Is that, I think we started planning it before.
And we
Okay.
rolled it out 5
And-
schools
Yep,
first
2
year.
2 years, yep,
2 years we rolled it out to the
Into all
10
10.
elementary.
right.
So the data, so the reports and the trends would be
Yep.
something I think the board would like to see. So
Yeah.
how it's decreasing.
I think that would make a lot of sense also for the timing of the Safe Schools Healthy Students grant, because I would say that this, among a couple other programs, was really the cornerstone of how we launched the developmentally appropriate practices, the work with the well-managed schools, and so on and so on. So as that grant is ending now, it would be a nice time to really review the data of how these programs impacted our district.
Excellent.
Okay, I promise this the last one. Is the goal for the special ed classroom to have the kids move out of those classrooms or just to be engaged in those classrooms?
So the goal is always to be able to return to regular education. That's the goal for all of our students. Some of them, it takes a little bit longer, but certainly we want them to be able to benefit from what we're offering. So the answer is yes and yes. We want them to be able to behave more in the classrooms that they're in, but ultimately we are teaching them the pro-social skills so that they can return to general education.
And so when we get the report, can we have information on the kids that have returned? Do we have that?
Well, we would not have student, we don't really have the ability, I don't think, to get student specific, but again, I can at least look at how many students have returned.
But the number, not the names.
Just for clarity, I believe Ms. Parker was asking for like, what are our trends? How many students, say year to year, are we able to return? Is that what you're looking for, like trend data numbers?
And ultimately, everybody knows we are a very transient district.
Yep.
Many of these students are students who are new or have things going on in their lives. If we cannot maintain them, sometimes they go to an out-of-district placement. Many of them move and go on to a new foster home because we do have a lot of DCF involved children as well. But again, we do our best. We also have, and I don't think we talked about that, we have the behavior support class at home school is a regular education class who is also supported through this grant. And that is a tier 3 opportunity that we have little ones, K1 and 2, who sometimes need the teaching in how to be pro-social and how to re-regulate themselves. And so a child may go there if they're a regular education student with the hope that they can get what they need and they don't have to be identified as special ed to go there and return back. And we've had some really good luck with that program, but more so this year, now that they're really trained on what to do. It's a very structured program where children earn points and they actually have to earn their way back to regular ed by how many points that they have, and it's working beautifully at Slade Middle School. I've been to a couple of PPTs. The children report on how many points they've earned, and I've earned my way back to do one class, and now I'm doing 2 classes, and there's a transition, still support that goes back with the kid, and so we don't just say you're cured, go back, because we haven't had luck with that. We really have to support the kids' re-entry back to regular education. And so my goal moving forward, and I know we don't have a proposal yet, is for us to be able to bring the SCM training to the high school next year for the students that would be leaving, minimally, for the students that are leaving Slade and Pulaski, who now know this program for 2 years and are going there and have done very well with it, because we don't have that right now at the high school.
And I do want to clarify, based on what Kelly just said, that this contract goes into is for the remaining of this school year for specialized classroom management in those elementary and middle school levels. I will be back in the near future. We're working on identifying the funding and building that contract with Boys Town to start work at the high school. And also there will be a final leg of the specialized classroom management implementation next year. So not the full year, but we're getting close there.
I had a bunch of questions, but thanks to Mrs. Annie Parker, most of them. And then some. But I'm glad to hear that there's good data on the effectiveness that we'll get to see eventually. But just for clarity, so the well-managed schools program has been in the district since 2014.
Yes.
But this specialized classroom management is in the first year.
second.
Did we start mid-year
Second
last
year,
year?
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so it'll be 18 months at the end of this
Yeah, so
school
just
year.
for some background information, when we first started doing well-managed schools and specialized classroom management in this district, we weren't working with Boys Town, we were working with a former consultant of Boys Town. So when we first started with specialized classroom management and then we moved to Boys Town to really make sure we were working with best practices, had fidelity going in our district, and had all those kind of checks in place to make sure that everything was going smoothly and the right data was being collected, we did have to backtrack a little bit. So when you say you're really a year and a half into specialized classroom management, it's really unfair to say to those programs that they've been operating for a year and a half because they didn't have the support that they needed in the beginning. So since they moved into working with Boys Town, they got the full 5-day training this past August. So I would say this past August is really their strong start point where they got all of the ice cream toppings they needed and not just cherries. So, yeah.
Can I also
We've been able
just,
to hold them accountable
Yeah.
this year because they got the full 5 days.
Right.
And they've had the ongoing.
and I want to say too, I mean, if, and it sounds like this is something you're interested in, maybe even just taking a half hour and looking at during workshop time, exactly what it looks like, what it means, what that point system is like. And I know Sue Girolamo would be more than happy to come and show you how they work it in Transition Center. I know Brookside is finding success with it as well. We have students from Brookside who are now entering and they're leaving for a portion of the day to go back to the high school and then come back. So it's about transitioning them. It's always with the goal of least restrictive environment. That's always what our goal is. So, but if that's something you guys would like to, we can bring Sue in and maybe do it a half hour before the board meeting or something like that.
The part that says that holding these trainings every 2 years, ensures that everyone's on board, whether there's transfers or retirements. Are you talking about that 5-day training that you talked about specifically, or?
There's really two sides to this question. So we will have district train the trainers. Every 2 years they will need to be reauthorized. So I'm just going through this right now on the well-managed schools side of things, where we can actually set, because I was nervous, I'm like, are we gonna have to fly Boys Town in here to authorize them? No. So we can record a video of them training our new staff hires, send it into Boys Town, and pay a nominal fee to Boys Town to keep using their program, but it's really low. And then the other side of it is what we've been doing for well-managed schools for that new teacher training is we've been plugging it into new teacher orientation. So one thing we will have to figure out moving forward is that worked really well for well-managed schools because it was a 2-day training, but how we train new staff in specialized classroom management being 5-day will have to be kind of a district PD decision on working with the Department of Academics and Human Resources to figure out when we get those people trained and what that looks like for their contract coming in.
So the trainers went to the 5-year training? The trainers?
All staff that implement
All
specialized
staff
classroom management go through a 5-day training.
Okay.
Our staff members that will be trained to actually do it will sit with Boys Town. It's normally for 2 days in advance, and then they're authorized by giving the 5-day training, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
don't have those people yet, but
Nope.
they're
We have them
in
for-
progress to build capacity and then have them be
We
able
have
to
them for
offer the
well-managed
5-day.
schools, but that's
Okay.
like 3 of specialized classroom management. It's really confusing because there's 2 programs, one
Yeah.
Boys Town and all services all over, but it's going well. So.
Oh, are paraprofessionals included in the training?
They mentioned that.
Yes, when they're needed. So we have not been paying paraprofessionals to come to every single half day. We've been making sure that they're there when the content of the training is appropriate for them.
In specialized classroom, they are required.
Oh, every time?
Yes.
Okay.
And we did offer,
And they
when
will
we
be
did the
moving
classroom,
forward.
the
Well-managed.
core classroom, all paraeducators were invited in the summer to attend.
Yep.
Can't mandate it, but they were invited to attend.
And they all have been trained.
With
In
with
specialized
ed.
classroom
Right.
management.
Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Excellent, thank you, Ms. Langer. All right. Next, I will entertain a motion to approve the bid waiver for Samsung NC Series 0 client display.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
That's about Zach.
Laura's here. I think I know what it is, but I was like, no, I'm not even going to try.
If we get too deep into exactly what it is, then I am going to call Mr. Prokop up here. But I can tell you that, and for those of you that don't know, we do apply for and are typically approved for a $250,000 federal Perkins grant every year. And so this is one of the purchases under the Perkins grant. It was approved a little bit late because the federal dollars were tied up a little bit later this year, so we're so we're a little bit further behind where we like to be. So I will probably be here for the next meeting as well with another one. But these are 31 zero-client display computers. They are kind of like Chromebook PCs. They're internet-based, not software-based. They're going to be updated in room 230, which was previously outfitted with Perkins funds as well, but is now going to be updated to keep our students, ensure our CTE program is competitive and aligned to the CTE standards and the visions of the federal Perkins grant. We do, in composing the grant, we do meet with MIS staff, and we make sure that, that whatever we're purchasing is able to be supported and is in line with both the district vision and the vision through MIS. So it's a grant for $10,197.14 for 31 computers.
Okay. Any questions?
Mr. Prokop can yell if I'm wrong, but so the zero client machine, it's essentially, it's a machine that looks and acts like a Windows PC, but it's all run through a back-end server that we maintain off, like, it's all run off of a server, so it's easier for MIS to keep them up to date because they're not having to go around and fix and maintain each individual workstation. It's all just server-based. It's kind of like a window to the server.
It's basically part of the virtualization. So that lab is run like any of the other computer labs within the high school or the district. The major difference is there is no actual hardware PC.
Can you please come up to the microphone, please?
Then you don't need to keep my face so close on that camera.
We can see
Really
you saw this like talking
like that.
I'm trying to talk back to you. I'm like, I
Sorry.
can't see
Sorry. Was caught up with other business, so I came late to this meeting.
No,
so,
you're fine, you're fine.
So what basically this works as, it looks like a monitor basically, and then it's hooked to, you know, it's got a keyboard and mouse, and then that all feeds back to our virtualization servers, the VMware renewal, the Microsoft renewal, and basically it takes a lot of the moving parts out and turns it into a computer terminal, just like any other Windows machine.
Thank you.
And we've already deployed these in other spots as well.
I thought I heard this before.
We started seeing these in Gaffney, for example, as another spot. All student machines are of this nature there.
Nice. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Reimburses the machine. All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve the student observation agreement with the Hospital of Central Connecticut.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Okay, discussion. Is there someone who can tell us a little bit more about this?
This is an ongoing.
Looks as long as the motion we had a
This
couple
is
weeks ago.
ongoing so that our students can do their internships or it's through our health academy.
Yes.
Where our students go to the Hospital of Central Connecticut and they're able to do observation of practices that happen. This is not new. This is a continuation of an existing one.
Got it. Any questions for me? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Excellent. And last but not least, I'll entertain a motion to discuss the board liaison role.
So moved.
Second?
Okay. So a few months ago, we talked about the board liaison role and we said we wanted to give it a little bit more bones, look at it a little bit more about what it is that the liaison does to clarify it for those who have new roles, new board members and some of us returning members, just to look at to see how it is that liaisons can be used in schools. So this is our first read. I want you guys to look at it and see if there's anything you want to add or detract from. We didn't have anything on the books prior to this about the board liaison role, so this is our first attempt at drafting what the liaison role looks like. So if you guys take a moment to look at it, and then we'll bring it back before the board for approval the next meeting, which would in 2 weeks.
Just gonna,
Yes.
quick clarification. Are you looking to adopt this as a policy for the board, or, because I know it's mentioned very briefly in our bylaws.
Right.
Are we looking to like amend to just clarify it in there along with this, or adopt a policy that specifies?
I think maybe probably the amendment of the bylaws, just to add it as, so we have a description, because there's no description.
Yep.
Just, did you want to add something about whose responsibility it is to appoint liaisons?
Typically, it's the board chair's responsibility to appoint them.
Typically it is, but it's not in the policy yet, so I don't know whether you want to just clarify it that way so that amongst all these other clarifications, it's not assumed that a board member could establish themselves as
Gotcha.
a liaison to a particular school.
So under President.
Yeah, put it in
Thank you, Ms. Cheney.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay. So this can be our working document, and then when it comes back before the board in 2 weeks, we will have a finalized copy of it. So if you guys have any questions in between now and then, we'll do that. We'll also have the list of schools and liaisons. If you have a school that you have in mind, just send me an email. But I know that most of us who have been on the board who have schools, unless we wanted to change them, we should be in good order. 50% of us are new, so, or more than 50%, I think, at this point. Okay. So all those in favor of postponing this to the second meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Any other things to bring before the board?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Wow.
Good night.